Hello everyone, welcome to CWP. Today we're going to understand something very important. How does a machine learning model actually learn and improve? Don't worry, no hard math. We're just going to try to keep things as simple as possible, as this video is made for absolute beginners. Those people who are just joining, the whole space, trying to get to understand and learn how to be a machine learning engineer. All right, shall we? Now, if we talk about machine learning, let's say machine learning is just equals to improving prediction over time. As simple as that. So if we take an example, before we go into that, I'm just going to go ahead and create a file here, and I'm going to call that file. Since we're talking about algebra, I'm going to call it ALG, and call that Python. ALG standing for algebra, okay? You can give the name anything you want. It doesn't matter at this point. We just want to create a space where we can put everything together or write our code. All right, so let's say we have, for example, we have stuff like prediction. We want to talk about prediction of houses or house price. All right, so we can have something like this. Let's say the prediction is equal to 500k. All right, that is the machine learning predicted 500k, and now we have the actual price. The actual price to be let's say 300k. Now we can see right here that the model is actually wrong, right? The prediction was 500k, but the actual house price is 300k. So how would you even know that the model is wrong here? Or how many percentage, should I say percentage? Or what's the difference, right, between what the model predicted and the actual price? If we look at it over here, we can say that the model is actually wrong by 200k, right? Yeah, that's pretty much what it is. So we can just kind of say the model is wrong because of the 200k difference here. It's not even close to it. That mistake is kind of too much, right? So we can just do the action we need to take here is just to adjust it, right? The model needs some type of adjustment to get better at what it is doing, right? So that's what it means. So we can just we can basically just say here that when we say model is learning, it simply means it is improving its prediction by reducing its mistakes. So does that make sense? So the model can come back and be like, oh no, I'm wrong. Okay, go back again. And now this prediction might be let's say 400, and then it'd be like, oh, you're wrong, go back again and reduce. So that's basically what machine learning does. Just try to get it to the lowest mistake length as possible. Just bring it closer to the actual price. All right, so let's talk about loss function over here. So I'm just gonna go down and I'm typing loss function. So just in a simple term, like I told you guys, we're just going to try to keep things simple. So I know you're very much beginner coming into machine learning. We just don't want to use a lot of stuff, right? A lot of vague words and all of those technical terms. Don't worry, you will learn those later as we go on in the future. But for right now, I'm going to try to explain it as simple as possible. So if you're just seeing me using some type of simple words, that is what it means. You just have to understand it, and as time goes, you kind of get a bigger picture of what is what, and the actual words you want to use it, or the bigger definition. But for right now, I want to try to keep things as possible. Let's as simple as possible. I'm sorry. So let's talk about the loss function. So when we talk about the loss function, there's something we need to understand here. Now, if we talk about loss is how wrong the model is, the machine learning model, right? Now, if you have big errors, that will be equal to bad model. If we have small error, that will be equal to good model. So imagine that this particular prediction right now. Imagine that your machine model predicted, let's say maybe 295. That's very close to the actual price. That's very close. That's a good model. So that will be less error right there. For this prediction of 500, that's a bigger error. So this is not, if there's any machine learning that predicted 500, that the actual price is 300, that means that machine learning is a bad model. Does that make sense? So the goal is to make sure to make loss as small as possible. So even if it is like you have 300k actual price, the machine model should get closer, make it small. The loss should be as small as possible. Now, there's one thing you need to understand. Every machine learning measures how wrong it is, right? That measurement is called the loss. The goal of training is very simple. The very one goal is to reduce the loss again and again and again. It can keep going and again and again and again, right? That's what it is. All right, so that's basically what loss function is. Try to reduce the whole prediction closer to the actual goal as much as possible. All right, does that make sense? We're coming later to kind of like put all those things in place so you can see how it goes down, the error goes down. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about, let's just do some type of storytelling here. So I want you to do some type of imagination right now. I'll probably put it on the screen so you can see. I want you to do some type of, imagination here. Now, I want you to imagine you're standing on a mountain, right? In darkness, everywhere's dark, and you're standing on top of a mountain and you want to reach the bottom. Now, the top of that mountain is equals to the worst model, right? Is equals to the worst model. The model is bad. Now, the bottom is equals to the best model. You got to reach the bottom, right? You want to make sure you reach the bottom. Now, the training a model is like standing on that mountain and trying to walk all the way down to the lowest point. You get what I'm saying? Now, the lowest point represents the best prediction with the smallest error. So you got to walk your way all the way down so that you can better get the model that you need. Does that make sense? I believe by now you get the picture. So that's just a simple story we want to tell right there. But let's talk about slope in machine learning. So I'm going to go here and talk about a slope. Now, what is slope? Slope actually tells us one thing. Which direction goes down fastest? Now I'm going to repeat that. Which direction goes down fastest? Now, if slope actually step big changes, that's equal to big changes. Now, if slope is small, now that's equals to small changes. Now, the slope helps model to know which direction to move to reduce its error. Move to the right a little, move to the left a little. Okay, if you move to the right, you know what? This is 500k, and your actual price is 300k. Now we know we got to go back a little bit, step backward a little bit, so that we can get closer to the actual to get to the lowest error. If this was actually like maybe 100, prediction was 100 here, we'll probably try to move forward. That's what slope does, right? It kind of like push the direction to go down fast, the fastest, which direction is going down the fastest, and try to push the roll, big changes to push it to the right, to the left, small changes to the left, to the right, up, down, and stuff like that. That's what the slope does. Again, like I said, the slope helps the model to know which direction to move to reduce its error. That makes sense? All right, cool. I'm gonna take another explanation of something you need to understand, which is what you're gonna hear this one a lot in your journey. All right, derivative, right? Derivative is very simple. The name seems so kind of like hard, but don't worry. I'm going to break it down. You might look up this somewhere and you kind of get a lot of explanation, but my point or the reason why I'm creating this is to help the beginners get it. Just get the full picture of it, understand it better from the root. All right, so derivative, what does this mean? This actually means how fast something is changing. Is it changing very fast? Is it changing very slow? So when we come to machine learning, how much should the model adjust? How much should the model adjust? So if we have stuff like a very big error, it needs to adjust more, right? It needs to adjust more, just like this case where we have like 500K and 300K. So it needs to adjust more. The gap here is 200, right? So it needs to adjust more. Now, if we have small error, it needs to adjust less. Let's say, for instance, we have our prediction to be 290. The need for you to actually adjust very big because this particular model is just what? Maybe $10 different from the actual price. So here you have to make a small step, right? So that's what it is. And now when we go down here, go back to the derivative, you can see the actual meaning of the derivative. Just how much should the model adjust? Should it adjust a very big error? If it's a big error, adjust more. If it is a small error, just adjust less. That's what it is. So the derivative tells the model how much to change its prediction to improve that particular model. That makes sense? All right, so if we go to the next one, which is more like how model learn step by step. We're just going to describe them here. How model learn step by step. So I'm just going to go ahead and kind of like list it so that you can see it on the screen, right? The very first step is to make the prediction, right? The model, first of all, make a prediction. It could be crazy. Don't worry. It's okay. It could be very wrong. That's fine. That's totally okay. The model, it's machine learning, models is kind of built in a way to mimic the way humans think, right? The very first time you do something, you probably be wrong. I'm like, oh, okay, I don't know what that is, but I think it's black. Now you don't know, right? Eventually you learn about that thing and you get better at it, and now you keep it in your brain. So whenever you're asked about that stuff, you kind of give the accurate answer. Now let's get back to the step. The very first step of how machine learning learns step by step is to make prediction. Now the prediction can be wrong. That's fine. Now the next step is to calculate the error, right? It goes ahead and calculate the error. All right. And then the next step is to check the slope. Remember, we talk about derivative. Okay, if the error is too much, you know what? Let's make a very big, step to change that. If it is too small, if the error is small, now let's just take one step. We're going to get it right. The fourth step is the adjustments. And now when it makes those necessary adjustments, the final step is to repeat the whole thing. And this whole process is called gradient descent. Now you're going to be hearing about this a lot on your journey of machine learning. It's called, I'm going to type it out here. It's called gradient descent. All right. I want you to put this one most in your head. You're going to hear it a lot. So what is this gradient descent? Now, this process repeats thousands of times until the model becomes very accurate. The whole process I listed earlier, which is to make the prediction, calculate the error, check slope, adjust, repeat the same thing all over, can go about 1,000 times, sometimes even millions, just to make sure the machine learning gets closer to the actual, or gets, and become very, very accurate. Does that make sense? So if we want to talk about a little bit more about this gradient descent is just equal to the direction to improve, right? Just like was said earlier, the direction to improve, should we go to the left, go down? Should we go up? We go down, move towards smaller error so that we can adjust that part. That's what basically gradient descent is doing. Now, it's more like working down a mountain step by step. So, like the example I gave you guys earlier, you're just right there at the very top of a mountain, and in the dark, you just have to take your step gradually to make sure you get down to your goal. The goal is to get as small error as possible. All right. So, enough talking. Let me just do this a little bit in code so that you can actually see what we are talking about here. The code is not going to be an actual machine learning, but it's just like the goal of this tutorial today is more like getting you to understand that machine learning is just minimizing your error as much as possible and getting you to understand how this thing works. This is for absolute beginner, getting everything a little bit, simple for you to understand. And as time goes on in the future, we kind of like unleash all the deeper path, the part of the mathematical aspects as we go, right? I don't want to scare you. The one thing you don't want to do to students who just come into classes to kind of give them crazy stuff to do on the first day. It's just gonna discourage them. But we just want to take things one step at a time. All right, let's get right into it. We have all this up here. We're not gonna remove those, but here I'm just gonna call. Let's say we have an error, and the error is the model made an error of 100, right? And we have the learning rate. We've talked about learning rate before in our previous class. And the learning rate, if you haven't heard about this before, you might want to go ahead, go to the previous class and just learn about this learning rate. The learning rate is more like just steps you want the model to take to reach its goal. So let's put these things into for loop here. I'm going to say for step in range. We want to see how we can reduce our error, the mistake, as much as possible, get it closer to, the actual. So here we're going to say the range 10. By now, you already know this. If you follow in my tutorial, you already know what range is. Guys, if this is your first time you're watching this and you haven't watched the previous videos, you might want to go subscribe to the channel. Go into the previous tutorials and work your way all the way up here. Okay, all right. So when we have range, we can just come down here and say, let's say our error is equal to error minus learning rate times the error, right? I'm sorry, I'm gonna type this correctly here. Error. All right, good. So let's say our error is equal to that. Let's bring the error and see what happens in 10 step. Remember, we have the range up there, which means we want to go 10 step. Remember, now the machine learning, an actual machine learning can go 1,000 steps, but this is just 10 because I just want to show you how it looks. Remember, you got to save your file, Control X, and then we'll come down here and I'm going to go Python 3 and I'll call alg.py and I'll send that. Now I want you to take a look at this. Our initial error was what, 90? Now it comes down to 81 and it keeps going down 72, 65, 59, 53, 47, all the way down to 34. Now this model is learning. This is how actually learning looks like. So you got to notice when you look right into this, I'm going to pull it up so you can see very good. Now if you look right into this, you notice how the error keeps reducing. This is actually how a model learns during training. Basically, I just want you to see that it reduces the error all the way from 90 to 34. And the more, that's how humans actually learn. You bring something, first of all, you see something you don't know, you kind of like do a guessing game. Oh, that's good. And then somebody be like, oh, next time when you see a black laptop, it means that it got 5 gigabyte of RAM or whatever. Now you learn that next time you might go and make mistake, but you kind of like, oh no, the other day the black laptop kind of like have some whitish something below. You just learn as you go and eventually you're good at it and you get it. That's how machine learning model learns. Okay, that makes sense? So why does this actually matter? Now, calculus helps the model to do some things, stuff like, know the direction to improve. Now, we did not go into deeper formula today, but eventually we will. Now, calculus also help know how much to change. It also helps to reduce the mistakes and help the machine model to become more accurate. So without calculus, I don't think machine model can actually learn anything. So because the whole thing going on behind the scene is all about calculus, and calculus is equivalent to the machine learning. We talk about probability, and all the stuff, which is directly talking about data. And without data, we cannot have machine learning. So everything works together. So with that being said, real world example AIs actually use this calculus under the hood. Stuff like ChatGPT, Netflix recommendation system. We have the fraud detection. We have the self-driving cars, the face recognition. All of them improve using gradient descent. All of them uses gradient descent. None of them did not. All of them uses that. So I just want you to understand this the basic way today. All right. So the key takeaway from this whole thing is that machine learning is just equal to adjusting to reduce error. That's basically what machine learning is. Because at the very first time you show a machine learning, data, they don't know anything about that data. They just kind of like guess random weights, random number, and just improve over time by running a lot of epochs. Oh no, let me not call it epochs now, just not to confuse you. By running a lot of loops on the stuff to reduce the error all the way down to the minimum. All right. So calculus helps model to improve prediction, learn from mistakes, and reach the best accuracy. Okay, now makes sense. Now you understand how model actually learn, which is what calculus helps the model to do. Now, some of you might be wondering, we've come to the end of the tutorial. There's nothing like math here. There's no kind of crazy math here. Yeah, this is just for the absolute beginners, for you to get the core concept. And as we go in the future, we're just going to unleash everything. And over here, we try to keep things very simple. So if you haven't subscribed, go ahead and subscribe right now. And I'll see you guys in the next tutorial. If you have any questions, just put it down there in the comment section. And do have a good one. See you guys in the next tutorial. Bye for now.